Hi everyone, welcome to the third and final theme video for this week, in which we talk about the character of Malvolio, someone we have not been able to address in our other discussions so far. Malvolio has an entire subplot of this play devoted to him, and I want to talk a little bit about what he's doing in this play, what purpose he has in the play, what the play is trying to do with his representation. And I do want to note that it's easier to gloss over this section of the play because it is filled with early modern slang. And that makes it hard to understand because most of us are not well versed in early modern slang. So it's a little bit harder to understand than the main plot, which is another reason to watch the Globe production carefully because it will cue you in so much better to the slang by watching it performed. Okay, so question number one is, why is Malvolio so disliked? Clearly nobody likes him in this play. People find him annoying, they find him too strict, they find him hypocritical. Why? I mean, there might be truth to all of those claims, I don't deny them. But in Act 2, Scene 3, in these lines, Mariah makes a very interesting claim about Malvolio. She says, sometimes he is a kind of Puritan. That seems like a very telling remark. Many of you are probably familiar with Puritans as they relate to the American story of founding the United States and founding New England that leads to the greater American country. So that's the story about the Puritans from the American point of view. But when you go back and look at the Puritans before they left England, while they were still living in London, etc., we get a different perception of them. In London and England, in this time period, in the late 16th century, early 17th century, many people, especially in the theater world, dislike Puritans greatly. In these plays, they're often portrayed as unbearably pious, self-righteous, and ultimately hypocritical. And that might also be because Puritans, from their perspective, hated the theater. They thought theaters were ungodly, immoral places where all kinds of terrible behavior took place. They loved to say that theaters fostered homosexuality or something like that. They called it sodomy, especially because we have boys dressing up as women. They were like, this is going, and I'm actually paraphrasing an actual Puritan here. They wrote, this is going to make everyone watch this play and go home and dress up as women because you're encouraging that kind of sodomy, etc. So playwrights, in return, did not like Puritans very much and were usually extra hard on them in their play. So that's probably one reason that Malvolio gets very poorly treated in this play, because of his relation to Puritanism. We can see some of these Puritanism things coming through when he reads the prank letter sent to him by Mariah when she pretends to be Olivia. Two things to pay attention to in this scene, and it's a must watch. It's very, very funny. Malvolio has pretensions of class climbing. He hopes to marry Olivia and become the count of the house. You know, right now he's just like head butler, the steward. He's a member of the servant part of the house, not a member of the actual aristocracy. He's dreaming of marrying Olivia and rising from servant to actual aristocrat himself. He'll be able to boss everyone around. He'll be able to wear branched velvet. This is something that the other characters find kind of reprehensible and also very funny. We can talk about how ethical it is to laugh at that desire, but it's clearly being laughed at by these characters in this play. The other thing that we can notice in this scene is that when he's trying to decode Mariah's sham letter, he spends a very long time decoding these kind of meaningless letters, M-O-A-I, and he seems to do a very bad job interpreting what that means. This makes us think about Puritans and their own biblical interpretations. How did Puritans interpret the Bible themselves? This play seems to be taking a kind of crack at how Puritans themselves poorly interpret the Bible in overly literal ways that are extremely incorrect. That's another way we see Malvolio being critiqued here. Now, despite all of these flaws, we have to note that Malvolio receives a very unhappy ending in a comedy, which, as we discussed earlier, is supposed to be defined by its happy endings. Well, everyone else is kind of matched with their happy pair, except for Antonio, we should say. Malvolio doesn't really get that kind of resolution. While they acknowledge that they tricked him, There's no scene of forgiveness or reconciliation. Instead, Malvolio's final words in the play is, "I'll be revenged on the whole pack of you." And if you watch it in the Globe, you'll find that it has a kind of chilling sense. While we're all happy for all these other characters, Malvolio leaves with these very dark, sad words. So why do you think this is happening here? Why is Malvolio denied a happy ending? Is it just for comedic purposes? Is it funny? Or do you sympathize with him and feel bad for him? Do you think his sad departure qualifies the otherwise happy ending here? Or do you think it's in fact necessary to kind of expel Malvolio and his bad energy from the rest of this crew? Is Malvolio, someone who dares to hope of class climbing? Is he a kind of queer remainder in this play, kind of like Antonio, who doesn't get his love for Sebastian rewarded either? Seems like there are a lot of ways to think about Malvolio here, and I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on what he's doing in this play and why the play treats him the way it does. I look forward to hearing your thoughts.